Hello friends, thanks for joining me. I want to read you a story from the book Bible Stories Rock, and today we're going to read the story about Abraham and Sarah and how they desired God's greatest blessings. Now, you probably know that I tell stories with rocks and pebbles. So these are just rocks and pebbles I found out hiking, like out here in the redwoods. Isn't it amazing out here? I wanted to show you one of my favorite places in the whole world, and that's the California redwoods in Northern California, right on the Oregon-California border. So that's where I am today, camping and hiking, and I thought it'd be really fun to read to you one of the stories from the book while I'm out here. All right, well, let's tell this story about Abraham and Sarah. Now, in this picture, does it look like Sarah's pregnant? Yeah, she's going to have a baby. And that's part of the story because Abraham and Sarah were almost 100 years old and they still hadn't had any children. Even though Abraham was a friend to God and one of the greatest men in the whole world, even Abraham and Sarah had challenges and trials and things they couldn't control or fix. But eventually, God fixed it and God let them have a baby. So I'm going to tell you that story about Abraham and Sarah. And I hope it reminds you that even if you have a problem or a challenge, by loving God and being a friend to God, eventually things will work out. Okay, let's read the story. Abraham was one of the truly great men of all time. God even called Abraham his friend. His unstoppable faith and obedience to God allowed him to know God and to walk with him. Abraham passed all the tests of his character and loyalty to God. Through him and his wife Sarah, as well as his second wife Hagar, came all the Islamic people, the Jewish people, and the Christian people, just as God had promised. Now, Abraham and Sarah were not able to have children throughout most of their lives. Even so, they continued to seek God's most important blessings and had great faith in Jesus Christ, even when life was very hard. Because of their lifelong devotion to God, He promised them three great gifts: posterity, prosperity, and power. And I'll explain those in a minute. These are the same blessings that God would share with us today if we too would be His true friends. Abraham and Sarah made sacred promises or covenants with God to love and serve Him always. And God promised or covenanted to give them as many children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren down through time that they wouldn't even be able to count them. That's the posterity promise. God also promised to provide a homeland for all their people. And that's the prosperity promise. And His third promise was to share His spiritual power with them forever. Their prayers were answered, and this is called the Abrahamic covenant. Abraham and Sarah believed God's promises, but they wondered how it would be possible to have a child and a big family when they were both about 100 years old. And they hadn't had any children, so how was that going to be possible? Well, God told them in Genesis 18:14, quote, "Is there anything too hard for the Lord? Sarah shall have a son," unquote. The next year, the promised miracle happened. Sarah did have a baby, and they named him Isaac. Abraham also had another son named Ishmael with his other wife Hagar. Today, thousands of years later, millions of us come from Abraham, numberless like the stars in the sky. And through his covenant with God, every person can be blessed. Let me show you that picture again. So you can see Abraham and Sarah, and Abraham's pointing to all the stars and explaining to Sarah, look, our posterity is going to be as numberless as all the stars in the sky. And they were amazed. So there's a question in here you might want to talk to your parents or friends about. It says, what great blessing do you seek from God? Abraham sought great blessings, and his prayers were answered. What great blessings do you seek? Would you like to hear a couple of my favorite scriptures that go with this story from the book of Genesis? In Genesis 15, 5 and 6. Look now toward heaven and count the stars if you are able to number them. So shall your descendants be. And he believed the Lord. Do you believe the Lord when he makes promises? I do, because he is the greatest being in all the universe, and he always keeps his promises, and he loves us, everyone. Okay, well, I'll show you a little bit more of the redwoods and Stout Grove that I'm in right now if you'd like to see some of this. And we can do another story another time. Maybe I'll do another one in the forest as well. But I wanted to remind you that when you have the book, you can get back to this video and all the videos just by clicking on the QR code with your phone's camera. When you point your phone's camera at the QR code, then it brings up a list of the videos that go with this story. And then each story has videos that go with them that you can either read the stories here or you can watch these videos. All right, thanks for joining me. This is Bible Stories Rock, and I hope that through the Bible and all of those neat stories, you too can learn how to walk with God in his power and be powerful. All right, until next time, bye. I'm in Stout Grove. I think it might be my most favorite place in the whole world. Stout Grove is such a sacred, beautiful, ancient place where somebody was smart enough and cared enough that they preserved a whole section of the forest so no one would cut it down, so you and I can come and enjoy some of God's beauty that's been here for thousands of years. So that's where I am today, camping and hiking.